Here is Oregon, a place to lift and celebrate the very best of Oregon. Thanks to our exclusive auto partner, Subaru, for being a proud supporter. Get the good stuff every day at hereisoregon.com or follow us on your favorite social media platform at Here is Oregon. Share the good.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale, here to take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. I'm coming to you solo today as Vicky is out sick dealing with some side effects from the COVID booster. Vicky, we hope you shake that off quickly. But in the meantime, today we'll be headed to some hiking trails around the state, looking at them from a perspective that we tend to ignore, some of us anyway. And, trails are often designed for able-bodied hikers, which leaves many areas inaccessible to hikers with disabilities, including those with blindness or people using mobility devices like wheelchairs or walkers. So joining me on the show today is Georgena Moran, who's the founder of Access Recreation, a local organization that has spent the last 20 years just about advocating for hikers with disabilities. Georgena, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess to get started here, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? How did you come to do this kind of work?
Well, I've always been an outdoor enthusiast. And so prior to having a disability, I was an outrigger canoe racer and, did a lot of hiking, around the Pacific Northwest. And, when, I started experiencing a few physical mobility challenges, I started using a power chair in order to hike. And I found that, coming from an able-bodied background, I really didn't have a clue as to whether some of the places I'd been I could use with a power chair. So, I live in Portland, really close to the Columbia River Gorge, and I wanted to hike there. So I, looked online to see what I could find and couldn't get the information. So this is what spearheaded the effort, back in 2003. It's kind of a newbie to a power chair. And it just got things rolling. It's amazing, the last 20 years, what has unfolded, because of my desire to play.
Well, that's such a strong desire. I think that so many of us can relate to the desire to get outside, to be in nature, to experience that. Tell us about what the experience was of you hiking in that wheelchair and that power chair. What were some of the challenges you faced that some able-bodied hikers may not be aware of?
For instance, just finding that place, in the gorge. I have a van that has a wheelchair ramp. When I didn't find the information online, I just set out with 3 places in mind, and the first one didn't have a place to park, so I couldn't deploy my my ramp. I mean, it was just along the side of the road there. The other one had a place to park, but I could only get like maybe 100 yards up the trail, this narrow trail, and before I hit an obstacle, like something that crossed the whole tread of the trail, that I was higher than 2 inches, so my chair couldn't go over it. So I had to back out the entire way.
Oh my gosh.
With somebody kind of like an airline, person in front of me, like, no, a little to the left, a little to the right. and I was able to get all the way back down to my van where I could, or back to the trail head where I could turn around and get back to my van. So, yeah, so the next one, I was able to get on the trail. And, I hit obstacles. I hit this big rock that they put in there because, I think it was intentional. There was deterioration, on the trail, but I had to maneuver around it. There was a big dent right at the base of the rock, and I had to kind of, climb up the edge of the trail in order to get up. My power chair allows me to go up pretty good steep grades, so that was no problem. And, over loose things, which manual chairs might have an issue with. If I have loose sand, which I did on this trail, I could, just be brought down to my axles. Yeah. So, but, Joaquina Falls Trail, I was able to get all the way up to this beautiful bridge where I could feel the waterfall against my face. And that's what the experience that I was after. I saw the picture of the bridge on the website, but, if I would have known, what it would take to get up there before I started, that would be helpful. I may or may not have done it, I mean, this is 20 years ago, so I was much more adventurous than I am now, at 65 years old and, maybe a little bit more cautious, but, again, that's mobility, but, other people have other things that you may not be aware of that could be an obstacle.
Yeah, it sounds like you went through a lot of this sort of trial and error process, going to some of these places, seeing it, figuring out what, how far you could get, what obstacles were there. But what I've been hearing you, when you talk about access to recreation, it seems like a big part of that is providing information to people ahead of time so they know what they're getting into. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So access recreation, is just like 4 people. It started out with 4. Now it's 3. It started out as an ad hoc committee of federal, state, and city park agencies, representatives that figured out how to provide information to people with disabilities. We created these guidelines. It's on our accessrecreation.org website. So this was for the agencies to provide better information on their websites. So, the rollout came and everybody was really excited, but they didn't do anything. I didn't see any changes. So we got a couple of grants from Metro and we created Access Trails. Now, that's what you're referring to. Access Trails is 36 parks and trails in the Portland, Vancouver region. What we do on these websites are we provide information. So people, like pictures with descriptions for, people that are blind won't be able to know what a picture looks like. So we provide, descriptions with the pictures, not just the pretty pictures, but ones about the trail, something, that may talk about, frequency of benches, we provide a map, with the different amenities along the trail. We do kind of like a 1 to 3 mile loop, that incorporates as many amenities as possible with as many trail surfaces as possible. And then we've got this thing called Trail Facts at a Glance, which gives you all the vital information, like, is there public transit? What's the currency of the information that we're providing? Yeah, we do kind of like a rating system. Is this easy, moderate, difficult? And then we kind of explain in the guidelines what that rating system means. And then sometimes, we've got 18 videos, and the videos are it's been a learning process with those too. The first video we did, one of my colleagues who's blind said, yeah, well, I got nothing out of that one, and it was like, oh, right. If you're blind, there's got to be narration that really addresses what's in the video. So anyway, so that's access trails.
What I love about access trails is you mentioned this, that the photos you have on there, the information you have on there is like really basic stuff that is so easily overlooked. I mean, I'm so used to, when I write a story about a hike, I'm used to putting up pictures of, the viewpoint and the waterfall and, the forest and all this stuff. But when I go to access trails, I see pictures of things like the parking lot and the lip of the bridge. All these details that are
sometimes
super
the inside
important.
of a bathroom.
Right. Yeah. And it's super important information for people. It seems like the work, what I've been hearing from you, the work is to not only provide this information through access trails, but then to get other places to also provide this information, say Oregon State Parks or U.S. Forest Service, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how your advocacy has evolved it to the point where it is now, or maybe I've been, we talked before this recording about some of the work you've been doing. It sounds like there's been an effort to get some of these agencies to provide this information on their own.
Yeah, that's our sole focus now. So what we do now is Access Recreation does trainings for these agencies. This has generated we've got a cooperative agreement now with the Fish and Wildlife Service. They want to make one of their refuges the premier site of all the guideline principles that we created. So we did training with some of their youth employment individuals, and with their staff, we did a national fish and wildlife training with their director. So that's happening. Wilsonville contacted us, to do a training. We've got, a couple other irons in the fire. The Trail Keepers of Oregon that created the, kind of a go-to book on hiking trails in Oregon. They want to do an update of all their hiking trails based on the guideline principles. So we, they contracted us to do 2 trainings so far, with a virtual that's all about the guidelines and access trails and how to do it, and then a on-site training where they actually take the lead and go on the trail and take pictures and take measurements and gather the information so that they can learn how to apply it in their book. So again, it's we're hoping that it's going to start spreading amongst agencies so that they can do this. And again, part of the reason why they've been hesitant, they know they've got information that people could use, but they're afraid of liability. They're afraid of saying something might be usable, because if somebody gets hurt, they're liable. Yeah. So what we do on access trails is we just say what it is, what you're going to encounter. We don't say accessible or usable unless it's an ADA bathroom, something that, that has an accessible parking space. That way we take the liability right off the, it's not an issue. Now the trainings are going to be it. It's going to be hopefully what changes their reticence. Any chance I get to be able to promote this, like on your blog, I'm all in.
Well, you've mentioned, these guidelines, and without necessarily getting too deep into the weeds about them, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what these guidelines are that you're bringing to agencies.
The guidelines are in two different parts. One is 7 different things that you can do that information that you already have, this is for agencies, information, like what's a telephone number that'll go to a human being rather than a machine? Is there a bus, that goes there? What is your address, a physical address? So somebody that is perhaps using a Lyft service, you can't go to a place unless it's got a physical address. So all of that information, is what we would say are the top tier. Then the second tier in the guidelines is things that might be a little cost, like having a staff person go out and take pictures, improving your website with a description that might be more usable, creating that map, with the icons. That's basically what the guidelines is about. And, the guidelines also is a wealth of information for people that want information on how to design a trail, people that want information about, different disabilities. And it's got a glossary that's just like miles long.
Yeah, that sounds like such great information to have. And like you said, a lot of information that is already out there, but just needs to be perhaps organized and made available.
And put on the top of your website so you don't have to, hand pack, in order to find that telephone number at the very bottom, dug in there somewhere, for somebody that uses a reader and who's blind. It's like, oh my God, it's just definitely a hardship.
Yeah. Like we said, kind of at the top, this is, a lot of stuff that those without disabilities of any kind just may not be aware of or may not think about, but obviously hugely important, to any hikers who do have any kind of disabilities. I wondered, this might be kind of an obvious question, but I wondered if you could just sort of speak to the importance of getting this information out there, why this is such a big deal.
There's certain things, like I said, I wasn't aware of before I became disabled. Mobility limitations, are like, the grade, the cross slope, stability of the surface and different obstacles, over 2 inches. But then there's things like, people who are slow walkers, they may need a bench. They may need something in the shade. They may need something in the sun. Describe that. Then there's, sensory limitations, somebody with a visual impairment. Is there edge protection? Is there like a tactile division between surfaces, between the edge? If there isn't edge protection, is there like high grass or something they can use with a cane? Braille, tactile maps, touchable objects that might be kind of useful or enjoyable, and then like also in sensory, people with auditory limitations. If you have a video, is there closed captioning? Different factors. If you're in a place where you're watching something, in a visitor center, is there a way to combine your hearing aid with the existing audible? Fluorescent lights can just really screw with your hearing. And then there's cognitive stuff. People with PTSD, again, like if you're going through a deciduous forest and that flickering light can be like a strobe light, and that could mess you up. If the park is near a gun range, which it happens, there's plenty of parks out there that are kind of off the beaten path, right next to a gun range, and, that would be an issue, with somebody, and also like closed loops can be useful for people that might get lost if they have cognitive disabilities. So again, just all that information, it doesn't need to be pointed out. This is for so-and-so, or will help with such and such. Just provide the information so we can decide for ourselves. Because a lot of people don't consider themselves disabled. It's just they got something,
As you and I have talked about before, I mean, it's something that virtually all of us will face to some degree at some point, whether, we find ourselves pushing a baby stroller, or we find ourselves with, a broken foot, or like you said, any number of factors, PTSD, paralysis, blindness. I mean, these things happen to people, especially if we should be so lucky to, live to an old age. It's something that I think most of us will face to some degree at some point. And your point about just providing the information seems very reasonable.
It is. It helps everybody. I mean, that you're right. I mean, people have accidents. They need to rehabilitate, having a bench occasionally might be nice. It helps everyone.
Yeah.
And everybody uses this, our resource. I mean, Hike It Baby, which is all about bringing kids out to hike. They use us almost exclusively, because their information, it's good to know ahead of time what you're up against, and what kind of, is there a picnic area, and is it covered? Is it rentable? All that stuff, it can be easily put out there with pictures and descriptions, and a lot of these websites, they can do that. But they just don't know what to do. What pictures and descriptions are most important.
You're obviously not the only one doing this work. So I wonder if you can maybe shout out a few other organizations or resources that people maybe should be aware of.
Yeah. Empowering Access. Ashley Schaefer, man, I could name drop her all day long. She has worked with another organization, Oregon Health and Outdoor Initiative, and they've developed the accessibility toolkit. That's for agencies to use. Social media toolkit. Again, kind of how to make it more open and inclusive, social media wise. The accessible travel guide, it's kind of a guide. It's an Oregon thing. And let's see, disabled hikers guide. It's something that you can Kindle or have a guidebook in your hand of Western Washington and Oregon. They've got kind of a unique way of grading everything. The whole concept of, I've only got this many spoons, this much energy, it takes 2 spoons to do this, it might use up 5 spoons if you do this.
I love that. That's great.
Right?
Yeah. Amazing.
So those are a couple.
Awesome. Well, so a lot of really good stuff out there. And we are going to actually talk to you a little bit more about some of the best accessible hiking areas in this region. But first, we're going to take a quick break. All right, folks, we are back talking to Georgena Moran from Access Recreation about hiking with disabilities. And Georgena, we talked a lot about some of the advocacy work you have been doing over the last 20 years or so, but I want to talk to you now about some of your favorite hiking spots. This is something we love to do on this podcast, is give people some recommendations, some places to go. So do you have a few in the area that you really want to shout out?
Yeah, boy, I've got more than a few, but I'll try to hone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got like really amazing ones to hidden gems, and I'm going to start with a hidden gem.
Okay.
Ronde Bridge Park in West Lynn. So this is it's got parking. It's got a little playground. It's got a fishing platform, which is pretty awesome. It's got it's got like a lowered area, for somebody to fish from a chair. It's pretty awesome. You could also get down to the water there. It's along the 12th, and it's got a story to tell. There's a little mystery that unfolds when you take a hike. There's benches along the river's edge. It's a small park, but it packs a wallop. It's pretty good.
Okay, wait, but what is this mystery unfolding? I'm so curious.
Do you want me to tell you?
Is this like a no spoilers situation, or like?
No, I could tell you. There's a meteorite, landed really close to there, and it's a story about. It's because of the ice age. It kind of shoved it down there. And so it kind of tells a story about the meteorite and how somebody came and tried to steal it, but then it was so heavy that it brought their little wagon down, and they couldn't do it, and they went to jail, and and then it ended up back to where it started from, somewhere east of here. So it no longer is in the area. But it does have a replica that you could touch. We brought one of my blind colleagues out there, and she was like, "Oh my God, I can actually touch it. This is so awesome."
Wow.
Right?
Oh, that's so cool. I've not been out to this park, and I'm dying to check it out now that you're talking about it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That one's awesome. Let's see what other. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you about another hidden gem, Spring Park. It's in North Clackamas, and it's it's a simple little park. There's not a lot there, no parking. It's all street parking. But in low tide, you can get all the way down to the Willamette River and cross over to another little island. And it's got tide pools. Again, I wasn't able to go, because of my power chair. And it was kind of soft, when it was low tide. But, I had a great viewpoint, of, the Willamette, all the action. So again, I'm drawn to places that have water. So, so those are two. I can give you one more.
Please.
That's more over in the, the north, and, Smith and Bybee wetlands, natural area.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
That's a great spot.
Yeah. There's, it's a great place in the spring to bring your binoculars and cameras and see the birds. It's there's two wetland areas. There's an area where you could slip in and go kayaking. again, some great viewpoints. There's one, a couple that are covered if it's raining. One that's not. And again, it's just a great place to check out wildlife and enjoy nature.
It's a great bird watching spot. We featured a local bird watching club, the Guerrero Bird Club. Folks who listened to that episode may remember hearing about Smith and Bybee as just a great place with a lot of paved trails, sort of flatter areas, but lead you to these really beautiful viewpoints. And that's what I love about it. It's just such a nice spot. And right here in Portland. Yeah.
Exceptional place.
Okay, Georgena, give us one more. We got time. Just give us one more little spot.
Well, there's Ronde Bridge in Hillsborough. Ronde Bridge provides a number of different things. You can get a viewpoint of the water, the river going by, but not as clear as these others. But it's got like a kind of a waterfall feature. It's got a big open area where you could, play with your friends and family. Picnic areas. Again, another pond where you can get close and see waterfowl. It's got just a number of paved trails, around there, and a few natural surface trails, along that little pond area. So it's just got a variety of different things, and all these that I've given you, they're all different agencies. So, they're all on access trails. But again, how do you find these? There's no central, place except for access trails.
Well, we're certainly glad that you're coming on today to share some of those with us. So folks, if you want to find out some more of these hikes, there are a few dozen of them on accesstrails.org, and you can find out more about Access Recreation at accessrecreation.org. Those two websites are, of course, linked together. Georgena, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, yeah, it's been great. I love promoting our work, and thanks for helping me do it.
Well, folks, that'll do it for today. But until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonians YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com. Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoyed the show. And if you want to support the podcast and our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and are interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show is produced by me, Jamie Hale, alongside Vicky Connor and Andrew Thien. Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.